One night, Lajla was coming home from after-school care. She opened the door and called out, "Mom, I'm back!" But then out of nowhere, a stranger grabbed her from behind and kidnapped her. When Lajla came to, she was trapped in a glass cell. There were some drawings scattered around her, and getting out of that jail seemed impossible. Fast forward to now. Lajla's got a PhD in psychology and is a resident lecturer at a big-shot university. On top of that, she's researching the minds of criminals who kidnap kids, digging into what messed up psychological stuff drives them to do such awful things. Right after her lecture wrapped up, Lajla got hit with some bad news. Her mom had passed away. She booked a flight right away and headed to her hometown, a small town in Sweden where she grew up. Her dad, Walter Ness, was tinkering with something at home and got all emotional seeing Lajla after so long. His eyes showed both the joy of seeing his daughter and the pain of losing her mom, Anne-Marie. Lajla's childhood buddies, Eddie and Jim, were stoked to see her too. They started catching up on old times, but you could tell they were also torn up about Anne-Marie. Lately, the rural community here has been banding together to protest against mining. They're fighting for forest preservation, climate protection, and against exploitation. Today was Anne-Marie's funeral, and Lajla's childhood friend Louise showed up too. Louise has been having a rough time with her husband, Saeed, for a while now. She wanted to open up about it, but clammed up around her daughter, Alicia. On top of that, the coal mining mess has the locals pretty pissed at them. Someone even chucked an egg at their car on the way to the funeral. Louise was super worried about Alicia's safety and wanted to talk to Lajla privately for advice. Lajla's flying back to the States tomorrow at 11 in the morning, so they decided to meet up early before she leaves. On the other hand, Walter wasn't thrilled about Lajla heading back so soon, but he didn't really have a reason to stop her. The next morning, Lajla said goodbye to Walter and showed up at Louise's place. When she got there, she saw the door was open, and in the bathroom, Louise's body was lying in the tub. Freaked out, she immediately called her Uncle Thomas, the town's police commissioner. Louise's mom, Christina, was a wreck, crying her eyes out. Things got worse when they found out Alicia was missing too. Word of Alicia's disappearance spread like wildfire, and a search team was sent out. Alicia's dad, Saeed, joined the team, and they combed through the whole forest. Morning turned to evening, but there was no sign of Alicia. Everyone was exhausted and taking a break when out of the blue, the commissioner had Saeed arrested. Turns out they found Alicia's clothes and shoes outside an entrance to the mining area. But why would Saeed do something like that to his own daughter? That question was on everyone's mind, and it didn't stop there. Birds in the area were mysteriously dying off, and nobody had an answer for it. The next morning, they questioned Saeed, asking about his relationship with Louise. Saeed claimed everything was fine with her, but that was a straight-up lie. During a search of the house, the police found divorce papers that Louise had filed. Saeed finally admitted they'd been fighting, but he swore up and down he didn't kill her. Either way, the commissioner was now waiting for the autopsy report, which could be the key to cracking this mystery. Meanwhile, Lajla was hell-bent on finding Alicia and ditched her plans to head back to the States. From what she could figure, someone close to Alicia might be behind her disappearance. So she went to talk to Alicia's grandma, Christina. There she learned about a guy who'd come to fix up Louise's house a few days earlier. Alicia and this guy got along great, and they'd been making videos together. The guy was from a rough part of town, and Walter wasn't keen on going there. But in cases like this, the first 48 hours are critical. Finally, after Lajla insisted, they went to meet the guy. Turns out the guy had a 10-year-old daughter, and he'd mixed some of her videos with Alicia's. He'd left his family behind to make some cash, so he was scared of getting tangled up with the cops. In the background of one of his videos, there was a dude who looked like he was kissing Louise. The guy said this car-owning dude would swing by to see Louise after Saeed left for work. That made it pretty clear Louise might have been having an affair with him. Lajla and Walter showed the video to Commissioner Thomas, but instead of being grateful, he flipped out on them. Truth is, he didn't like anyone meddling in his business. Anyway, the autopsy report came in, and it showed Louise was knocked out before she was killed. If the affair thing was true, Saeed might have had a reason to murder her. In today's questioning, he kept lying through his teeth. He claimed he was in Stockholm when it all went down, but they'd only know for sure once his phone's location data came in, which was still pending. Could this be the same guy who kidnapped Lajla 20 years ago? Lajla started connecting the dots to her old case. Back then, she'd managed to outsmart the kidnapper and escape. It was on this very road where two women had saved her. That same night, the mine's alarm started blaring like crazy. By morning, word spread that toxic water was leaking from the mine. The townsfolk couldn't even use the water coming into their homes. People were pissed. They'd already been demanding the mine shut down, but nobody listened back then. First, the poisoned water was killing birds, and now it was a threat to people's lives. What if their kids accidentally drank the toxic water and died? Who'd take the blame for that? Finally, Christina got it and decided to shut the mine down until the issue was fixed. Meanwhile, Saeed's phone location report came in. He was in fact in Stockholm during the incident. With no evidence against him, they let him go. Then out of nowhere, they got a video from the kidnapper showing Alicia passed out. The kidnapper didn't make any demands, so nobody could figure out what the hell he wanted. Meanwhile, Lajla's childhood friend Eddie was nowhere to be seen lately. When they asked his wife Nikki, she broke down crying. About a week ago, Eddie came home with $35,000 in cash. When Nikki pressed him about it, he just said, "Live it up." But when he heard at a public meeting that the mine leak might be tied to the Alicia Louise case, he freaked out and took off. Nikki was scared he'd gotten himself into deep trouble over some small screw-up. That night, she left their daughter Isla with Walter and went looking for Eddie. She found him wasted at his dad's hunting cabin in the woods. When they questioned him, he spilled that he'd been paid $35,000 to cause the mine leak, and he only talked to the guy through email. Then they found out the emails Eddie got and the video clip of Alicia came from the same server. That meant the same person was behind both. When Lajla got home, she spotted a drawing next to Isla and was floored. When she asked about it, Isla mentioned some guy named Iki who came to her through the window. He'd made the drawing, and he had a tattoo of a red flower on his hand. This clue could be a big break in figuring out who Iki was. From the start, there was this guy on the research team, Daniel Frick, who was always looking for a chance to chat with Lajla. Today, when Jim was at the mall, throwing shade at Lajla for being a police snitch, Daniel jumped in to defend her. After that, they got to talking, and Daniel asked her to grab coffee. Lajla couldn't say no. That same evening at 4, news broke that another 10-year-old girl had gone missing. Iki was pulling off one crime after another like it was nothing, and the police seemed clueless. That's why former Commissioner Walter showed up at the station to check on things. There he found a voicemail of a girl crying, begging to go home, with the sound of rushing water in the background. They quickly looked into nearby dams and found out a car was spotted, parked near one at 4 that afternoon. It wasn't just any car. It was a Peugeot 205, the only one in the whole country registered to some Vanya Frick. Vanya was 84, so no one could suspect her. But here's the thing. She had dementia and got sent to a care facility 6 months ago. Still, someone had been using her home internet and more for the past 2 weeks while she was gone. As soon as Tomas got this lead, he put together a team and headed for Mora. Meanwhile, as promised, Lajla was with Daniel. Right then, Walter called her. He said they'd tracked down Iki's hideout and asked, "By the way, where you at?" Lajla replied, "I'm at a rented cabin with Daniel Frick, one of the research team guys." On the other side, they dug up everything about Vanya's family. Turns out Vanya's brother had a son who got locked up 3 years ago for trying and failing to kidnap an 11-year-old girl. 4 weeks back, he got a short release, but he played the witness who bailed him out and vanished. When Walter heard the guy's name, he froze, because Lajla was with that same Daniel Frick right then. Daniel was keeping her busy with his smooth talk, pouring her drinks, and she was knocking him back. Meanwhile, Thomas's team reached Vanya's house and found a kid there. That meant Daniel was Iki. Just then, Lajla noticed a red flower tattoo on Daniel's wrist. She put it together. Daniel was Iki, but she was too drunk to make a run for it. Next thing, Iki started plotting to take her out. Somehow, Lajla forced herself to puke, cleared her head, and bolted out the back door. Iki was hunting for her everywhere, but she tripped and fell while running. Lucky for her, Walter showed up just in time to save her ass. But the case wasn't closed. They'd only found one girl at Iki's hideout. Alicia was still missing. They blasted Daniel's face all over the news channels and locked down the city. Still, Jim and his buddies didn't trust the cops. They formed their own crew to catch that kid snatcher and hit the streets. Jim was ready to end that psycho for good. This was the second time Walter saved Lajla from the jaws of death, even though she wasn't his real daughter. After finding Lajla, Walter was supposed to hand her over to her family, but her mom had killed herself, and sadly, she had no one else. So Walter adopted her. Lajla was starting to feel suffocated here and told him to book her a ticket out as soon as possible. Meanwhile, late that night, when Jim came home covered in blood, his dad freaked out. When asked, Jim said he'd been hunting. Still, just to be safe, his dad made him take off his coat and burned it. The next morning, Iki's body was found hanging from a crane in Maine. Suspicion immediately fell on Jim since he'd casually mentioned wanting to kill Icky, but there was no proof, so Thomas couldn't touch him. Then they found Jim's shoes in his locker, soaked in blood. They sent him straight to the lab. Things got crazier when Walter got a courier from some unknown person with a girl's braid inside. It was Lajla's braid. She recognized the ribbon tied to it. The kidnapper was taunting everyone, saying no one could catch him. Best guess? Daniel Frick was probably killed by the same guy, since Frick called himself Icky. As for Alicia, she was likely with the real Icky. They also figured out the blood on Jim's shoes was from a deer. The cops were striking out left and right, so the case got handed to retired Commissioner Walter. Orders came from above, so Thomas couldn't do jack about it. Feeling like a failure, Thomas got wasted that evening. When he was totally hammered, Saeed showed up. That's when Thomas spilled the beans. All this time, you guys were digging into Luis's affair. It was me. Yup, Thomas was having an affair with Luis, and he just blurted it out. When Lajla heard about this, she went straight to Thomas's place. There, she found Luis's phone, which might hold the secret to his death. She dodged Thomas and bolted back home with it. But Thomas was at her doorstep the very next second. Somehow, sneaking around and hiding, Lajla managed to escape and hid behind a house. From there, she saw Thomas putting on gloves. Panicked, she called the cops right away. But before she could say much, Thomas knocked her out and kidnapped her. Meanwhile, her dad had no idea what was going on. He was out fishing at his favorite spot. Hours later, when Lajla came to, she found herself locked up in the same creepy place where Icky used to keep her as a kid. Alicia was there too, and the second she saw her mom's phone, she recognized it. Lajla asked her to unlock it, and she quickly called Walter. He recognized her voice instantly, but the signal was terrible and the call dropped. Still, Lajla wasn't too worried. She knew Walter would track the location from the number and come find them. She was just explaining this to Alicia when they heard footsteps. Icky was back. Just like always, he was wearing a mask. But Lajla had already figured out he was Thomas. Only, when Icky pulled off the mask, Lajla froze. Her heart sank. She couldn't believe it. It was Walter. Walter was Icky. He grabbed the phone from her and shoved her into the corner, then took Alicia outside, just like he used to do with Lajla. That monster even cut off Alicia's braid. He used to use the hair as fish bait. One day, he was about to do the same with Lajla, cut her braid and strangle her too. She stalled by telling him she needed to finish her book, and when she got the chance, she locked him up and ran. Now in the present, after cutting Alicia's braid, Icky tried convincing her that Lajla was a liar and she shouldn't talk to her anymore. And being just 10 years old, Alicia believed him. But Lajla somehow got through to her and calmed her down. Together, they started trying different codes to unlock the door. When nothing worked, Lajla told her, "Next time Uncle Walter comes in, I'll distract him with small talk. You gotta run and slam the door shut behind you. That's how we're both getting out of here." Over there, Thomas had already found out that Luis's phone was missing. He figured out that it was Lajla who'd stolen it from his house the other day. He told Walter about it and also said that if that phone ended up in the wrong hands, his job could be in serious trouble. Walter replied that Lajla was sick and that he had already gone into her room, grabbed the phone, and handed it over to Thomas, since Thomas was going to get rid of the evidence anyway. After Thomas left, Walter grabbed a tarp and headed back to the basement. That was the same tarp he was going to use to wrap up Alicia's body. Lajla started begging, "Dad, why are you doing this?" This was the moment Alicia had to run, but she just stood there, frozen like a statue. Walter says he was totally into Lajla. He'd never felt that way about anyone before. So he started keeping tabs on her, watching her every move. When the time was right, he kidnapped her. But she was way sharper than he expected. She bolted the first chance she got. Her mom paid the price for it. Walter took out Lajla's mom and made it look like she killed herself. Then he adopted Lajla, raising her like some picture-perfect dad. Still, when the time came, she ditched him and took off for America. Not this time, though. To keep her here, Walter killed her friend Louise and snatched Alicia. That trick worked for a few weeks, but after Daniel Frick betrayed her, Lajla started talking about heading back to the States. So Walter offed Daniel too. One look at the bodies screamed revenge killing. Meanwhile, Thomas swung back to the farmhouse to ask Lajla some urgent questions. That's when they found a dead cop in her room, the one sent to protect her. The guy had a photo of Lajla's mom. Maybe he'd figured out who Walter really was. So Walter got rid of him too. Tomas called it into the station right away. When he stepped outside, the farmhouse door was wide open. There was a box lying there, lid off, stuffed with braids from a bunch of girls. Now it was Alicia's turn. She wasn't useful anymore. Lajla begged and pleaded, but Walter didn't care. He started choking Alicia. That's when Lajla lost it. She slammed her head into a mirror, over and over, until Walter finally let Alicia go. Then Thomas heard noises coming from the basement. He went down and was floored by what he saw. The two brothers started fighting, going at it hard. By then, the cops had rolled up outside. They got Alicia and Lajla out safe. Walter got slapped with life in prison. In the end, at Lajla's request, he spilled the beans about the girls whose bodies he dumped in his favorite spots.